I am making a deck profile, or an updated deck profile for a deck that I'm calling Lair Critias. It's basically a Lair Darkness deck mixed with the Fang of Critias. But it's a really fun deck, and I feel like given the current situation, it's probably not the best deck to be playing right now, considering the deck's main traps are virus cards. So there's that. But the extra deck is incomplete, but that's just player preference at this point. Starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. When it's normal summoning, especially on level 3 or lower Fiend, or 1 level 3 Fiend from your hand or deck, but negate its effects, nor can it be used for synchro summoning. That that last bit doesn't really matter. Or actually, all of it doesn't matter, because with its effect, you'll be summoning Lilith, Lady of Lament. Lilith's effect is, if it is normal summoned, then its original attack begins 1,000, but also has the quick effect if you contribute a dark monster for a cost to then reveal 3 normal traps in your deck. Your opponent randomly chooses one of them, it's set to your field, and the rest get shuffled into the deck. But normally what you do is you'll normal summon Tour Guide, summon Lilith, and now Lilith can still activate its effect, contributing for cost, but nothing would happen at that point. Then I play 3 copies of Arima the Wicked Warden. You can discard Arima to add Layer of Darkness from your deck to your hand, or you contribute 1 dark monster to draw 1 card. And if it was a dark monster other than the activated Arima effect, you can also add a 1 dark monster with 2,000 defense or more from your deck to your hand. Which normally, if you're doing that, you'd add Darkest Diablos, which then, due to its own effect, you'll be able to summon itself. Speaking of which, I play 3 copies of Darkest Diablos, Lord of the Lair. Diablos is quite the annoying card, just because it has protections where it cannot be targeted with card effects, nor can it be tributed. Or it can't be tributed by opponent's card effects, so it can't even be kaiju. But it's fun because you can tribute a monster, including itself, to then make your opponent put 1 card from their hand on top of their deck, or the top or bottom of their deck. And you can, if a dark monster is tributed on your side of the field, less in your hand, even if not, or in your graveyard, you can special on it. But the even if not part just means, like, if you activate Arima's effect, search for it, then at the resolution, because you tributed, you'd be able to summon Darkest Diablos from your hand. It's really fun when you have a Darkest Diablos in your hand and another engrave, because then you tribute, you summon from hand, activate Darkest Diablos effect, tributing itself, summon, or take 1 card out of your opponent's hand, or Darkest Diablos in the graveyard's effect activates, summoning itself back, tribute it, take another card out of your opponent's hand. But I think there's a reason you can't. Okay, yeah. Ignore that last part, because you can only activate each Darkest Diablos effect once per turn. So you can only summon it by its own effect once per turn. If I'm wrong on things, just don't pay attention to that, just because it's been a while since I last used this deck. I just put this deck back together because I randomly managed to get everything I needed for the deck again, so I rebuilt it. But anyway, that is all I play for monsters. And I only play 12 monsters. Fun, right? Moving on to spells, I play 1 copy of Terraforming, just so that I'm technically playing 7 copies of Lair of Darkness. Lair of Darkness changes all monsters on the field to dark monsters. Once per turn, if I would tribute a monster I control to activate a card or effect, then I can tribute 1 dark monster my opponent controls, even though I do not control it. And then once per turn during the end phase, mandatory effect to summon as many torment tokens as possible to the turn player's field, equal to the number of tributed times the monsters are tributed that turn. So, if 4 monsters were tributed and it's your opponent's turn, they'll get 4 torment tokens. But if it's your turn and only 2 monsters were tributed, then you'll get 2 torment tokens. This card's downfall is that it loses to Ogre because its end phase effect is mandatory. So even if there are no tributes, it still activates to check to see if there were anything it can summon. That's something I don't like. Then I play 3 copies of the Fang of Critias. Yeah, but its effect is you can send a trap from your hand or field to the graveyard that's listed on a Fang of Critias, or it's listed on a fusion monster that can only be summoned with the Fang of Critias. And then you special summon that fusion monster and it's treated as a fusion. You can only activate 1 Fang of Critias per turn. Then I play 3, probably the dumbest fusion card in this deck, 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Discard a card, fusion summon a fusion monster by using fusion materials on both sides of the field's fusion material. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this. However, there are only 2 cards I know of that can actually negate Super Polymerization. The Abyss Scale that negates the activated effect of a spell card your opponent activates, and Cerulean Skyfire. Both of those do not technically activate their effects. They're just things that happen. So, if either of those 2 cards are present, which Mermails haven't been part of anything for a while now, and Sacred Beasts are literally stopped by a single hand trap, so if you activate Super Poly, there's a 99.9% chance of actually working. But that is it for the spells I play. Moving on to the much beloved traps. I play an 8th copy of Lair of Darkness. Metaverse just lets you take a field spell from your deck and either add it to your hand or activate it. This card is put to 1 because of Mystic Mind, a card I still think needs to go ahead and get banned, because it says someone can't play. Cards that say that shouldn't exist. I say as I'm making a deck profile for a virus deck. Then I play 2 copies of Grinning Grave Virus. Tribute a dark monster with 3,000 or less attack. Then your opponent has to destroy 1 card of their choice from their hand or deck for every 500 attack that monster had. But if the attributed monster had 2,000 or more attack, I get to look at all cards. You get to look at all cards your opponent draws until the end of their 3rd turn, and destroy all monsters cards among them. However, the fun part of this: cards destroyed and sent to the graveyard by this card's effects cannot activate their own effects that same turn. So this is great against Dino, especially when they don't know what's going on, because they'll think, okay, I'll destroy all my babies in deck. And then they'll activate their baby's effects, and they'll go, you can't. Why? Grinning Grave. It's hilarious when that happens against Dino and they have no clue what's going on. It's amazing. Then I play 3 copies of Crush Card Virus. This is only in here for a Fang of Critias target for a monster in the extra deck. And then I play 3 copies of Eradicate Epidemic Virus. This card is insane. You tribute a dark monster with 2,500 or more attack points to then be able to declare a card type, spell, or trap. You check your opponent's hand, all their set cards on the field, and all cards they draw for the next 3 draw phases, or their next 3 draw phases, and destroy all cards of the declared type. So you activate this against Sky Striker, called Spell, they just lose, because then they lose all their spells for the next 3 turns. As far as I can tell, they don't do very well on just 1 or 2 spells. Then I play 3 copies of Deck Devastation Virus. You distribute a dark monster with 2,000 or more attack. Check all your hand, all their set monsters, and all cards they draw until the end of their 3rd turn. And destroy all monsters with 1,500 or less attack. Then, just to be cute, I play 3 copies of Magic Cylinder. When opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster, negates attack, and if you do, burn your opponent's life points equal to that target monster's attack on the field. This card is hilarious because this card has literally won me games. Then I play 3 copies of Mirror Force. This is in here just because it's Mirror Force, as well as being a Fang of Critias target. That is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, I play 2 copies of Doom Virus Dragon. Doom Virus Dragon is basically its summoning just lets you check your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, and every card they draw until the end of their third end phase, and destroy all monsters that have 1500 or more attack. And this effect lingers, so even if they get rid of Doom Virus before the third end phase is over, they'll still be under its effect. Then I play 2 copies of Mirror Force Dragon. Mirror Force Dragon has the effect of when a monster your opponent controls is target, or when a monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. The only time you can't activate this effect is during the damage step. But I just think it's funny for your opponent to try to attack into it. You're just like, okay, destroy our cards. And then they just lose because they didn't realize that Mirror Force Dragon was a thing. And then that's literally it for the deck. The rest is just super poly targets of 2 copies of Mighty Mud Dragon for literally anything that has monsters with the same attribute but different types. Earth Golem Agnister for Cyberse monsters, for Cyberse decks. Dragostapelia for Dragoon, because normally most decks that make Dragoon will end up having Dragoon and Anaconda. So they'll have a Predaplant link, or a fusion monster and a dark monster, so I think it's good. Something else that can be done with that is using Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon, which is probably another card I'll toss in for Dragoon, because it just requires a Predaplant monster and a level 8 or higher monster that's the original level, or level 8 or higher dark monster that's original attribute is dark. Then Violet Chimera just for Salamangreat, because one of my friends loves playing Salamangreat. 3 copies of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, because it is a lair deck that uses Super Poly. And I'll probably end up mopping up to 2 copies of Predaplant Trifiorum. This extra deck should only have 2 more open spots, which I'll probably toss in a second Trifiorum and Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon. Or I might just toss 2 of those in, requiring a Predaplant and a level 8 or higher monster's original attribute is dark. Literally, it's only going to be used to out Dragoon. But that's it for my layer critias deck. If there are any other decks you would like me to make, or have any comments on how I can improve the deck, feel free to comment those below. Or because I am trying to get more actual game videos uploaded, if you have any decks you would like to see face each other, feel free to comment those below as well. And thanks for watching.